Welcome to Eye on Africa. I'm Georgia Calvert-Smith, and tonight the death toll from 4 suicide bombings in northeastern Nigeria rises to at least 32. A funeral, hospital and wedding are amongst the sites targeted by attackers. Also, opposition parties take more than a third of ministries in South Africa's painfully haggled out new cabinet. The ANC keeps 20 of 32 posts, with its largest coalition partner, the DA, heading up 6 ministries. And staying with South Africa, scientists there do what they can to put poachers off from hunting rhinos, including introducing radioactive material into the animals' horns. But first, Nigeria's reeling in the wake of a string of suicide bombings that killed at least 32 in the northeastern town of Gwoza. Saturday's blasts targeted a wedding, a hospital and a funeral amongst the 4 sites. All of these places and gatherings where people expect compassion and solidarity. Instead, they were met with violence.
We can't even say how these people got to Gwoza. We don't know how many of them. We don't know why they did all this. With the issue of the insurgency around, we're trying to settle people, taking them back to their places, but unfortunately this incident happened. You see, there's going to be so much fear in people and movements in Gwoza. Not only in Gwoza, even the surroundings.
I have no words. My son is unconscious. I pray that God would grant him a speedy recovery, and to the perpetrators of this heinous act, may God guide them on the right path.
I can't just imagine the pain of losing 5 people at a time. So this is something I can actually not forget, because this has taken me back to memory lane of 2014, when Gwoza was raided by this terrorist group.
Well, no one's yet claimed responsibility for the attacks, some of which involved some female bombers, but there are fears that they mark the return of a grim tactic used by Boko Haram extremists in Borno State in the past. Sam Olokoya tells us more.
It has been several years that Nigeria saw these kinds of highly coordinated suicide bombings. The attacks evoke the frightening feeling that suicide bombers who have been on break for several years may be back again. For many Nigerians, the attacks in Gwoza brought back familiar memories, corpses and various human body parts blown to bits. Nigerians were treated to these chilling images before the suicide bombers took a break years back. Major cities like the capital Abuja, Kaduna, Kano and Maiduguri still bear the scars of suicide bombings. The reign of terror had no limits and no rules. The United Nations building in Abuja, crowded markets, bus stops, mosques, churches, and media houses were among the places targeted. The question Nigerians are asking is whether the evil days of suicide bombings are back again after living under a sense of false security for many years. If so, Nigerians will be living in fear and wondering when the next suicide bomber will strike. It is the first suicide bombing since President Bola Tinubu came to power a little over a year ago. If this marks a resumption of suicide bombings, it will pose a major challenge for a government that has many problems to deal with.
Sam Olokoya there. Now, South Africa started its first week with the new cabinet that's been painfully thrashed out after the ANC lost its parliamentary majority in May's elections. The coalition that it was forced to form with 9 other parties has made haggling over government portfolios tougher than ever. Anne Wenzel with more.
South Africa finally has a new government. A big surprise and a move that has received a lot of criticism is that the cabinet has grown from a previous 30 ministers and their deputies to 32 ministers and 43 deputy ministers. This is a move backward for the president, who during his earlier tenure had made it clear he wanted to shrink parliament to shrink expenses, announcing a cabinet heavy with ANC members, with the former opposition DA holding 6 ministerial posts and 6 deputy ministers. President Cyril Ramaphosa said the only way they could make the parliament inclusive for the GNU and its members was to add posts. Many are still unhappy at the inclusion of the DA, seen as a white party which favors business, included in the GNU. But analysts point out that some of the deputy ministers appear to contain a watchdog component, as most ministers are ANC, but where you have a DA minister, like Minister of Communications and Digital Technology Solly Malatsi, his deputy is the ANC's Monli Gungubeli, while the DA's Leon Schreiber is Minister of Home Affairs, his deputy, the ANC's Njabulo Nzuza, to mention a few of these pairings. Eyebrows have also shot up over the appointment of the PA's founder, Gayton McKenzie, as Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, with many citizens and analysts alike asking how the former gangster is going to handle such a tricky portfolio.
And Mauritanian President Mohamed Ould Ghazouani has been re-elected for a second term. Election officials say that he won with a little over 56% of Saturday's vote, way ahead of his main rival, anti-slavery activist Biram Da Abeid. Now, he rejected Sunday's partial results, alleging fraud and bias on the part of the Electoral Commission. The Constitutional Court will now review the numbers and announce final results, although it's unclear when. Ghazouani, in the meantime, has been positioning the country as a strategic ally of the West in a region that's been swept by coups and unrest. And in Kenya, rights watchdogs say that at least 39 people have been killed in anti-government protests from mid-June to the end of the month. Anti-tax marches descended into deadly violence and sparked clashes between police and crowds last week. President William Ruto subsequently promised to withdraw the finance bill that's at the heart of the crisis, but discontent remains. Our Olivia Bizo tells us more.
Just when you thought that Kenya's President William Ruto couldn't get more unpopular, well, that's exactly what happened. On Sunday, he made a surprise appearance at a church and gave a speech about the importance of peace and unity. Many have criticised him for that appearance, saying that he's only trying to distract the population about the lethal use of violence by the government during protests last week against the finance bill. People and protesters gathered outside of the church and booed him as he tried to exit. And then later in the day, later on Sunday, he was on national television for an interview. And many have also criticised him for that appearance, saying that he seems completely disconnected from reality. One episode in particular has been very criticised on social media. At one point, one of the journalists asked Ruto what he would say to the mother of a 12-year-old boy who was shot 8 times. And the president's initial reaction was, well, he's alive, right? And that has sparked an uproar on social media, with people saying that he doesn't understand the true extent of the violence that was used by the government during the protests, because that boy had actually been killed. Now, President William Ruto had been trying to reassure the public on Sunday, but in fact he did quite the opposite. Another protest is expected to take place this Tuesday, with many calling on Ruto to resign.
Liv Bizo there getting us up to speed. Now, a British man was amongst those testifying in a coup trial in the Democratic Republic of Congo on Monday. He said that he was unwittingly caught up in the attack on May 19th. Emmett Livingston in Kinshasa tells us more.
Trial in Ndolo military prison in Congo's capital, Kinshasa, on Monday, Yusuf Azangi said that he'd been recruited in order to set up an NGO and that he didn't know about plans to overthrow the president. On May 19th, about 50 people, led by Congolese political exile Christian Malonga, launched a failed coup in which at least 6 people were killed. Azangi is a Congolese-born British national who had been working as a plumber in London. The prosecution has painted him as the main recruiter behind the coup attempt, accusing him of travelling across Western Congo to hire militants. On Monday, Azangi told the military tribunal that he'd first met Malanga in 2016 in London and had worked with him to set up an NGO in Congo. He denied being informed of any details before the attack on government institutions on May 19th. Lawyers also argued that Azangi was forced to take part in the attack by force. The account provoked a fierce response from the military prosecutor, who said that Azangi had said under interrogation that Malanga had indeed been planning a coup. Hearings will continue on July 5th, which are due to feature the questioning of 3 US citizens who are also charged in connection with the coup attempt. All 51 defendants in the case are facing the death penalty.
Well, here in France, Eritrean Benjamin Guermey has entered the history books by becoming the first black African rider to win a stage at the Tour de France. The 24-year-old won stage 3 of this year's mass sprint in Turin. Guermey, riding for the Intermarché Wanty team and already winner of a stage in the 2022 Giro d'Italia, dedicated his win to the whole of the African continent. And South African scientists are doing what they can to put poachers off from hunting rhinos, including introducing radioactive materials into the animals' horns. An extreme gamble, but the stakes are high. Clem Balla with more.
Injecting radioactive isotopes into live rhino horns in a bid to combat poaching. The initiative, known as Project Rhisotope, was spearheaded by James Larkin, director of Wits University's Radiation and Health Physics Unit.
So the idea is to devalue the rhino horn in the eyes of the end user, to make it a lot easier to track going through borders, international crossings and things.
South Africa is home to the majority of the world's rhinoceros population, with an estimated number of 16,000, making it a hotspot for poachers. Rhino horns are highly prized in Asia, where they are used in traditional medicine for their supposed therapeutic effects. In February, the South African government announced that almost 500 of these giant mammals were killed in 2023, representing an 11% increase compared to the previous year.
We tried to poison the horns. That didn't work. Dehorning doesn't work. Nothing works. But this is something you can't destroy. You can't throw it away, and it petrifies people, you know. Oh, it's radioactive, so we gotta run.
So far, 20 rhinos have received the isotopes. The material will live on for 5 years inside the horns and are at low enough doses that they will not impact the rhino's health nor their environment. Researchers hope the process can be replicated to save other wild species threatened by poaching, such as elephants.
And the religious music and sounds of Nawa were born in Morocco, but have captivated fans everywhere. A festival featuring musicians from around the world just wrapped up in Essaouira in Morocco and was a chance for intergenerational and international celebration of a fusion of traditional Nawa and contemporary sounds. Take a look.
The African soul is in our blood. We know each other like family. Playing together in a residency is not like playing what you already know. It's an opportunity to meet people, to give and take at the same time. It's a sharing. I play Gnawa and also his pieces like Mbalak and other Senegalese rhythms. Here we learn to know and interact with each other. This is the cross-fertilization of cultures.
I think Nawa music is a great representation of Moroccan culture and history, and I think it's amazing that Essaouira is the heart center for that, especially as it intersects with other cultures around the world. Morocco is a quite diverse country, and it's really nice to be able to represent that through music.
Oh, that looks amazing. That is all we have time for Eye in Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Till then, take care.